The Kingdom Hearts design document is a delicious piece of lost media which managed to resurface around the internet in 2015. It's essentially a pitch for the game itself, with concept art, a plot synopsis, and even a few juicy tidbits that never made it into the final game. Of course, I'll give this all a stronger spotlight when we get to the relevant parts of the game, but I bring this up now because I absolutely love how this world is described in the synopsis. Traverse Town, a crossing point of people, items, information, and memories. So welcome back everyone and everything, and ask anyone who's played Kingdom Hearts how to describe the feelings Traverse Town gives them, and they'll usually describe it like a warm hearth. Homey, comfortable, welcoming. But in these initial moments, we watch our home, a star as far away as can be, blink out of existence. And now, we're in these harsh cobbled streets, draped in the cloak of night. A far cry from the warm sandy beach we were just swept away from. Traverse Town is imposing. Tall walls and buildings block us in at every angle. There's a weight to it. The lights are warm, but the total lack of familiarity is hardly cozy.
Oh, hey!
Now, in control once more, let's check out a few things. We got some posters over here. One's got a nice looking boat on it, the other's got some gibberishy scribbles. Now the game's gone out of its way to make sure we walk down this alley and out into the main square, especially thanks to this oblivious lunker right up here. But with some very precise jumps, it is possible to escape this alleyway via the rooftops. If we do so, we'll be able to roam most of the town freely, and even find a few oddities, like the fact that the accessory shop is being manned by a different guy than usual, and this edgy looking fellow hanging out in the alleyway, very concerned about puppies. These are all things that would indicate we're further in the game than we are, so we've really thrown a wrench in the game's scripting here, to the point that we've completely soft-locked our file. There's no way to trigger the next progression flag, so don't even think about saving. Now let's try that again, and actually do what's expected of us here. Out in the main plaza, we've got a few colorful characters we can talk to, but there's an ominous undertone to almost everything they say. Where am I from? None of your business. Don't ask that question here. Everyone's got an unhappy past. It paints a picture that this is a town of refugees. We've washed up here after losing our worlds like so much flotsam and jetsam. Also, this guy here is totally a reskinned Tidus model. There are some very cool details scattered about here as well. This building over here is some kind of restaurant, and its menu is fully legible, which is rare, including its prices. Oh my god, $85 for bottled drinks? What a steal. This building's also got this really funky clock on top of it. Judging by this, I'd say it's about half past yeet. There's some chalk graffiti on the wall of the item shop. It's impossible to tell what any of it says. The only remotely readable words here are book compost, but we do have this adorable little sailboat drawing. My favorite detail though is the cafe sign. It's nothing special in the HD remakes, but back on the PS2 versions, it's got some Japanese text written on it. This doesn't directly translate to any word in English. It says Fransuya, which most approximately translates to France, yeah, in English. Okay, so it's a French cafe. Big deal. Why is this your favorite detail? Well, it so happens, this is the exact name of a real French cafe in Shinjuku, Japan, barely a mile away from Square Enix's headquarters. That's no coincidence. I'm sure it's also no coincidence this adorable little tribute didn't make it into the HD collections. I'm guessing they didn't actually get permission to put the name of their favorite French restaurant in their game, or if they did, they didn't want to do it again for the remaster. Either way, a crazy obscure detail, the likes of which you know I'm nuts about. Lastly, I think I'd better acknowledge the elephant in the room. These funky lamppost designs, these signposts over here with the white-gloved fingers, this crazy mailbox, all these shops and their signage, and especially this sign over the town's exit. See you again with a Mickey emblem over the top of it. This area's design is heavily influenced by Disneyland's Main Street. That would certainly explain the prices on that restaurant, too. In all seriousness, Kingdom Hearts has a lot of parallels to a day in a Disney park, taking abbreviated journeys through the worlds of some of our favorite movies, meeting recognizable characters. We'll keep an eye out for more as we go along, but I love this. Our first stop after leaving home is a world heavily influenced by the entrance to a Disney park. This is probably the best time to bring this up too. Sora's outfit is strongly based on Mickey's design, with big yellow shoes, puffy red pants, and a black top, which, intentionally or not, mirrors a popular trend among Disney park goers called Disney bounding, where you dress as similarly to your favorite character as you can get away with, because full-on Disney cosplay isn't actually allowed for Disney reasons. Right, was I playing a video game? So what the game wants us to do now is visit that accessory shop, to such a degree that if we try to leave the first district without checking it out, we'll get this scene here like, hey idiot, there's this big building over here that you ignored. Of course, in return, you can literally ignore that prompt and head on to the second district anyway. Oh hey, it's that guy again. Maybe we should give him a name. Oh, never mind. I think it's time we properly introduced these creatures. These are called shadows. They're the most basic enemies we'll face, but their design is so iconic. I love that they went for yellow eyes instead of red. Despite their sinister presence, they are downright adorable. Now, after dealing with that batch, we can advance things again by simply heading back to the first district, entering the accessory shop, and then leaving again. So if you're in a hurry to move things along, we could be on our way right now.
Wait, sorry to interrupt you, but I have an interesting addendum to make. While running through on another file to get footage of something else, I tripped on an odd barrier. After dashing through town doing the bare minimum to progress, I ignored these shadows and just bounced back to the first district. But then, after leaving the accessory shop, I didn't get the next cutscene. I thought I might have somehow found another soft lock, but after killing this random batch of creepy crawlies, I entered the shop and left again, and that progressed things. After a bit of experimentation, I discovered that the game actually won't let you progress until you've felled at least 5 shadows. An interesting progress gate I doubt most people know about, but I will now uninterrupt my past self.
But you already know I'm in no hurry, and there is plenty to see and do in this town, so let's rewind a bit. Back in the first district. That funky mailbox actually has something of a side quest for us. Find 10 postcards and mail them for a prize. We can find one right away by doing a bit of silly parkour on the roof of the accessory shop. Then let's check out the item shop. It's run by Huey, Dewey, and Louie of all characters. Donald Duck's nephews. So child labor's on the table in Traverse Town. Good to know. I handpicked everything on these shelves. We carry only the best. I will say that is quite an impressive assortment of stuff that should really be refrigerated. Unfortunately, we can't purchase any of that. All he's got in stock are some basic recovery items. We can, however, sell any pretty stones we won from the race back on the island, which I may have gotten too many of, I'm not gonna lie, especially considering they were made significantly more valuable in Final Mix than they were in the original. Couple more nice details in here. This sheet on the counter, even if it were higher resolution, it's in cursive, my only weakness. Frankly, I have no idea. There's some posters on the walls. This town's really got a thing for boats, huh? And then check it out. This scale over here will actually react to Sora standing on it. That's a ridiculous amount of polish for something so unassuming. Before we leave the store, we're gonna do something very logical and attack the ceiling fan. That'll net us postcard 2 out of 10. Alright, let's finally check out the accessory shop. Inside, we'll be introduced to Sid from Final Fantasy... hold on. Wait, how many Sids are there? This is Sid from Final Fantasy VII, whose full name, incidentally, is Sid Highwind. He's a bit crass, but has a very protective nature. And while Kingdom Hearts' E rating wouldn't allow his more colorful vocabulary to be represented here, once again, it's worth knowing what he's all about. He's basically a father figure, and if you do recognize him from his home game, he's a reassuring and endearing presence. Though I will say, if you don't recognize him, his offer to look out for you here does feel a little like it comes out of left field. But this is a nice shop. Got this hearth and this comfy couch and these starry display windows. Yo, this is neat. How come I've never seen this in real life? Necklaces and bracelets and earrings and stuff hanging from trees. Hey, is that a frickin' crown? Not to mention, the only save spot in town. So while it is a little obtuse that coming back in here after getting attacked by the shadows is our only progression path, it's basically inevitable that you'd stop back in eventually. As long as we're here, the obsidian ring Sid sells isn't a bad investment if you can afford it. And you can hop up here and steal a mithril shard from him. An item of no apparent purpose right now, though we can get a hint as to what it's for over here. We can synthesize items out of other items on the second floor. How neat! Unfortunately, the second floor is currently closed off, but through the power of blatant hacking, we can open it up early. This has almost nothing to do with the game itself, because there'd be no way to do this on a normal file, but I do find it fascinating from a coding perspective that if you manage to jury-rig yourself somewhere you're not supposed to be, the game just kind of proceeds business as usual. Ordinarily, I'd expect another softlock scenario like the one we found earlier. Moving on to the second district, yada yada, this guy freaking dies. If instead of returning to the accessory shop we explore this area, there's a lot to find. Like postcard number 3 right up here on this awning. Boots and shoes, huh? I really doubt you have Sora's size in stock. This Suits and Dresses store sign bears a striking resemblance to the Mad Hatter from Disney's Alice in Wonderland, which is definitely a bit odd, but I'm gonna say it's indicative of Traverse Town's role as an intersection of ideas from other worlds spilling out over into it. Yeah, that sounds good. If we do a bit more platforming onto this cathedral-looking building, we can knit ourselves a Mega Potion, which is pretty overkill recovery for this stage in the game. Other than a lot more shadows to bash, that's all we can find outside here. Let's check the buildings. Throughout our travels through the town, we'll get a number number of scenes of Donald and Goofy looking for either us or Leon. And again, since all we have to do is go back to the accessory shop, every single one of these is optional and highly amusing. Inside the hotel, there isn't much of substance, but there is a definite peculiarity worth pointing out. You can hit the bell at the front desk, and if you do it enough, we'll get this faceless hotel manager NPC telling us there's no vacancy. Now that alone is kind of interesting, but examine these brochures by the desk and you'll get this note from the manager that they're hosting an art exhibit. If we show we're a fellow appreciator of the arts by examining the two paintings in the hallway, the manager will pipe up that paintings are great. Hit the bell a few more times after that, and he'll tell you that if you ever stay the night, you should try hitting the clock. So that's convoluted, but you know what? I love that it's here. Though I gotta say, Midsummer Dawn over here looks pretty wintry to me. Our next stop is that big cathedral looking building, and for anyone watching who hasn't played this game already, I want you to take a moment and imagine what you think the interior of this building will look like. Okay, ready? Welcome to the Gizmo Shop. What is this room? What do they sell or make or do? It is an eternal mystery. Now, similar to the beach in the Destiny Island Night of Fate, it's easy to assume that the shadows spawning in this room are infinite, and that you just have to get fed up and ignore them. But once again, there is a finite number. It's even a neat little detail. Every single wave that spawns has one more shadow than the last, incrementing until the last wave spawns a batch of 9 of them. There's no reward for beating them all, except the piece to take in this room's many crazy details. I really like these little bird silhouettes on this circle, kind of referencing animation cells. There's this prancing deer silhouette on this gear too, which is a similar deal. Oh hey, a clock we can actually read. Guess it's midnight? That makes sense. There's nothing else in here for now though. Let's move on to our next stop, the Dalmatian House. 101 Dalmatians is of course another animated Disney classic, and its role in this game is pretty genius. Pongo and Perdita are the only Dalmatians left, and the 99 puppies have been scattered to the winds, no doubt when their world was swallowed by darkness. So it's up to us to find and gather them all back here. This little atelier consists of 4 unoccupied rooms, each adorned with pictures of the many lost puppies. Hey, wait a minute, this clock says it's 2 o'clock, and this grandfather clock says it's 3. What's going on here? The back door of the house leads to the alleyway, a stretch of back street that aligns with the balconies of the hotel rooms. There's a potion at the far end of it, another on the balcony of the employees only room, and a pretty stone on the far rooftop. The most noteworthy details out here are probably all these flags advertising the many businesses we've seen around town so far. Now let's head through this door and pop back out into the second district. Hey, there's another clock up there, and this one says it's like 5 till 7. What time is it in this town? The last place we can check out now is the third district, down this alley and through this door, but this district is by far the most dubious. No shops, one empty house. What's this area used for? The only thing of any real note out here is this fountain portraying the iconic dinner scene from Lady and the Tramp, and now I want spaghetti. But there's really nothing else to do except head back to the accessory shop and advance things forward. Pretty simple, like, yeah, that makes sense moment here. The first district is now infested with shadows, so all the NPCs have presumably taken shelter inside. Or maybe they got shredded to pieces, who can say?
They'll come at you out of nowhere.
Who are you?
And they'll keep on coming at you, as long as you continue to wield the Keyblade. But why? Why would it choose a kid like you?
Hey, what's that supposed to mean?
Never mind. Now, let's see that Keyblade.
What? There's no way you're getting this.
All right, then have it your way.
So another guy way cooler than me wants to duel. Just another day that ends in Y for Sora. Leon is another supposed to lose fight. He's by far the toughest opponent we've ever faced, due mainly to the fact that he is extremely tough to stagger and can crack off his melee attacks lightning fast. Attacking him at close range is sure to get you sliced and diced. However, at range, his Firaga spell hits like a truck. Odds are, unless you've grinded to an absurd degree, Leon's gonna do you in no problem.
Hey, you found it. Nice going, Leon.
Still, it looks like things are worse than we thought. A lot worse.
However, he's far from impossible. It's just a matter of knowing when it's safe to hit him, for which there are only two real opportunities. One is when he's airborne. He'll frequently leap at you to clear long distances, and if you can catch him before he hits the ground, you can basically get a full combo on him for free. The second is if he is stunned by returning the fireball. Similar to Waka, deflecting the projectile will leave him vulnerable for a short time, but beware, he'll counterattack immediately after you finish a combo, so be ready to jump away the moment your last strike lands. So essentially, to win this fight you have two options. You can face him down in the open plaza, master the timing of deflecting Firaga, and whittle him down each time he gives you an opening. Alternatively, you may notice that the entirety of the first district is our battleground, which enables us to do some very silly things. So our second option is unforgivable cheese. Lure him down to this alleyway, jump up to the upper ledge, and up here, you're completely safe from his projectile. Now simply wait for him to hop up to you, and when he does, give him a couple good whacks. For some reason, this always results in him doing an immediate backstep off the ledge. Now this might take a minute, but hey, if it works, it works.
No way. I can lose.
Now you're gonna...
Ah man, plot armor seems pretty busted when someone besides us has it, huh?
Oh, you're slipping, Leon.
I went easy on him.
Look at the shit-eating grin that pops up for a split second when he says he went easy on us. Whoa.
Looks like things are worse than we thought. A lot worse.
This cutscene is a new addition to the final mix versions of the game, and was not present in the original. As such, there's no voice acting despite the dialogue, but there's something about the silence of it that makes things extremely eerie in a way that I think adds to the scene. All the same, I have final mixed feelings about this addition. It sort of pops a bubble of apprehension to see that Riku is okay this early. But if you have already played through the original at least once, you'll recognize the area he's in, and it is a neat bit of information to know where he landed when he was swallowed by the darkness. Like I said, mixed feelings.
Gosh, there's nobody here. Sure is spooky.
Actually, I'm not scared.
Excuse me, did the king send you?
I don't have a lot to say about that cutscene specifically, but honestly, I gotta say, even if the humor itself doesn't land, the vibes of that sort of old-school Disney cartoon humor have been spot on whenever these two goobers have been on screen. It's a fun time. This next cutscene, though, is a doozy. It's one of the longest and most expositional in the game, and it's got a lot going on. Sora hallucinates Kairi for a minute before she turns out to be this girl named Yuffie, and then she and Squall
That's Leon.
take it in turn with Aerith in the other room to explain to Sora, Donald, and Goofy the whole state of affairs.
Those creatures that attacked you are after the Keyblade.
Let me summarize. The barriers between worlds, which might more accurately be called dimensions, are breaking down ever since the appearance of the Heartless. Shadows, Darkside, and many, many other creatures born of and drawn to the darkness within people's hearts. You can think of them sort of like heart zombies, and they're especially interested in Sora's heart because the Keyblade scares the bejesus out of them. Then they start talking about this dude named Ansem, who was actually researching the Heartless and recorded all his findings in the Ansem Reports, which, wouldn't you know it, got scattered across the worlds because it really wanted to be a MacGuffin in this hot new Kingdom Hearts game. Goofy concludes that those pages must be what the king went looking for.
We've got to find him quick.
Red! First we need that key.
And then attention turns to the enigmatic Keyblade. It's your typical Master Sword in the Stone kind of dealy bopper, only wieldable by its chosen one. And Sora finally takes a moment of introspection to reflect on how flip turned upside down his life has gotten.
Well, I didn't ask for this.
The Keyblade chooses its master, and it chose you.
So, tough luck.
How did all this happen? I remember being in my room. Wait a minute. What happened to my home? My island? Riku! Kairi!
You know what? I really don't know.
I gotta say, that line from Leon is really endearing. He seems like the man with all the answers, and I know it's kinda edgelordy, but I love that he respects Sora enough to be honest with him. Even though he's been really down on Sora being the Keyblade wielder, which does kinda feed into those themes of adults looking down on children I pointed out back in the Destiny Island cave, this puts him a cut above anyone who might have sugarcoated the situation. Speaking of, Leon, or rather Squall Leonhart, is the main character from Final Fantasy VIII. He's your typical broody, no-nonsense anime protagonist, and as you may expect from someone whose sword is a gun, he's basically the embodiment of a 13-year-old boy's masculine ideal. What's interesting is that his arc within Final Fantasy VIII centered largely around his struggles with being in a position of authority over others. As a quintessential lone wolf type who keeps everyone at arm's length due to edgy trauma, he's uncomfortable placing his trust in his teammates and having their trust placed in him. What we have here on the Kingdom Hearts side of things then is a more mature Squall, one who's plainly quite comfortable leading this little band, and even highly trusted by King Mickey of all people. This may even be tangentially related to why he goes by Leon in this universe instead of Squall. To my knowledge, a moniker he never took in his original game, though we will get a slightly more concrete answer to that later. As for the rest of this rabble, we have Yuffie. I gotta point out this cool effect where her and Kairi's voices overlap for a second as Sora comes back to reality.
Kairi? Who are you talking about? I'm the great ninja Yuffie.
Yuffie originates from Final Fantasy VII, in which her role within the party is as this chaotic neutral thief who tricks the party and nicks their shit like 3 times before settling down and joining them properly. Here, she's obviously a lot more neutral good from the get-go, but the way Sora mistakes her identity might be an homage to her original role as a trickster. Fun fact, her position in Leon's little squad was originally meant to be filled by Riku from Final Fantasy X, but was changed to Yuffie to prevent any confusion with Riku, different amounts of Ks notwithstanding. However, Yuffie's Kingdom Hearts design does contain a few elements of Riku's, as a bit of a nod to that original plan. The last of the trio is Aerith, also from Final Fantasy VII, and perhaps one of the most recognizable members of the cast. Aerith is generally just too kind and sweet for this world, and essentially represents a beacon of hope and positivity even in the face of overwhelming evil. But as such, she's actually pretty boring and doesn't really warrant that much discussion. The trio as a whole is pretty cool though, bringing across this sense of a coalition formed by the scattering of several worlds, banded together in scrappy rebellion despite the odds. Back in control, I know, right? Finally. We're in one of the hotel rooms we couldn't enter earlier. There's a locked chest on the table, you can tell by its giant glowing keyhole, but then if you talk to Yuffie, she's like, "Hey genius, you have a stonking great magic key, haven't you?" And just like that, we've unlocked the ability to open anything with a keyhole on it. How nifty. There's another piece of art from the exhibit in here. 1800 in the past, time flies. I'd love for this to be a reference to something, but looking at it, the only thing that comes to mind is Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I don't think that's right. 2 more little paintings over here, Bald Mountain, 7 AM, and Midday Jungle. Now these are indeed both references. Bald Mountain, of course, references the sequence Night on Bald Mountain from Disney's Fantasia, set to the song of the same name originally composed in 1867, which was based on the Bald Mountains, significant to witches in Slavic folklore dating back as early as 500 AD. Psh, yeah, obvious stuff, everyone knows that. Midday Jungle references something we'll see a bit later in the game, so we'll come back to that one. But now we've seen every painting we can see in the art exhibit, and they all describe one time or another. The hotel manager already rewarded our discerning eye for art by telling us to hit the clock in a room should we ever stay in one. Don't worry, clock, this won't hurt a bit. Before we do, once again, this clock matches none of the times we've seen on any other clock so far. It's like 9:34. I've given up already. When I started, I didn't expect yeet to be the most accurate clock in town, but you've broken me. At least now I can break you back here! Every time we hit the clock, it'll be set to the next hour, and every time we get it to match one of the times mentioned by the surrounding paintings, we'll get a rewarding jingle. Once we've gotten it to match all 3, a treasure chest will spawn on this credenza containing a mithril, described in the item menu as an extremely rare metal ore, and I believe it considering every hoop we had to jump through to find this one. You can't even lock onto the clock to know you can hit it, you basically have to get that hint from the manager. Anyway, that's all to the green room, and Leon won't let us leave, so all that's left is to talk to him and tell him we're ready whether we're ready or not.
Yuffie, go!
Yuffie!
Sora, let's go!
This badass action scene is brought to you by hot dogs. They're really expensive. So Leon tells us not to bother with the small fry and find the leader, but man, there's so much to go over now. For starters, this new variety of Heartless. They're called soldiers, and while they're a bit tougher than shadows, it's the same basic principle. What I definitely want to note about them is that if you only ever played the original game and not Final Mix, they may look a tad different to how you remember. In fact, Final Mix palette swapped dozens of the varieties of Heartless in this game, and I personally find it usually wasn't for the better. The soldiers are a prime example, changing from a dark blue to a dark orange. It just kind of browns them out. Thinking about this change in the context of when Final Mix was first released less than a year after the original, finding so many of the enemies with a fresh coat of paint must have been pretty novel, a good way to mix things up for players who likely just finished the game only a few months prior. However, in the context of there's no reasonable way to play a non-Final Mix version of this game these days, I'm disappointed there's not something like an option to toggle back to the original colors in the menu. Now, like I said, tons of the Heartless have seen a change in Final Mix, and I think it'd get pretty repetitive for me to point it out every time we come across a new one, so instead what we're gonna do is just use the original designs in the bios, and I'll just point out any that I find to be significant upgrades or downgrades. Speaking of other Heartless, if we head into the Red Room, there's a strong chance that you'll encounter a batch of white mushrooms. White mushrooms are a very peculiar species of Heartless, inaggressive, and if you attack them, they get more annoyed than anything. We can't do anything with them yet, but it is worth knowing they're here. As for the Red Room itself, you get a pretty stone from its treasure chest, but the elephant in the room for me are certainly these kanji all over the back wall. At least, I assumed they were kanji, but after some cursory research and an embarrassingly long time holding up a Google Translate lens to my monitor, I realized that everything here is totally made up. Though these scrolls to the sides are clearly based on Japanese kakejiku down to the red signature in the corner, these are unfortunately a bunch of meaningless scribbles. What is pretty cool is comparing these to the original textures, and seeing how the artists interpreted these low-res designs into what we ended up getting. I'll also point out that the hotel has 2 more rooms, which we'll regrettably never get to see the inside of, but based on the doors, room 3's got a western desert theme, and room 4's got an undersea ocean theme. Man, I bet it's like that one hotel room in the Goofy movie. One last thing to point out about the hotel itself before we move on, and this might just be my favorite detail about it. Out here in the alleyway, by once again hacking and flying above the rooftops, we're afforded the rare opportunity to look between the seams of this game's level design. It's possible to land within the red or green rooms here, and if we do, we'll find not only that the dimensions of these rooms within the alleyway map are identical to how they'd be if we were still within the rooms proper, but we can still find all the collision mapped models of the furniture still active here, just invisible. Not only that, but all the loading zones attached to the doors, all of which we should have no reason to reach from the alleyway map, are fully functional as you'd expect. This reveals something wholly remarkable about Kingdom Hearts' world design. Even though every area we've been to is separated by loading zones and doors and black screens, if you were to combine every map into one, they would all connect and line up with little to no overlap or disjoints. This makes sense in a way. Remember, one of Kingdom Hearts' principal inspirations was Mario 64. The developers were struck by the free-roaming nature of the world, so I suspect they designed many of the worlds of this game to be the same way. Massive maps you could see the entirety of with a proper vantage point. Of course, with how incredibly detailed these areas are, it's no question having the entire world loaded in at once would have been ludicrously resource-intensive, even for the powerhouse that was the PS2. So obviously they scaled things back, and broke these large cohesive worlds into pieces that could be loaded and unloaded often. Still, going forward, we will find a few more areas where we can see things slotted together like puzzle pieces, which is a cool testament to what might have been. Back in District 1, we'll find all our homies have cleared out the Heartless and have some interesting things to share. Most notably is Aerith, who will give you a free Mega Potion. She also calls us the Keyblade Master here, which I want to draw attention to, cause this is actually a minor mistake in localization. In Japanese, she says, "So, you are the one chosen by the Keyblade." Going forward, we'll hear a lot about how Sora is the Keyblade Master, but in Japanese, they'll always say something along the lines of Keyblade's chosen one, never Keyblade Master. It's not really a big deal, but this does go on to be a minor plot hole in future games, so it is worth pointing out, I think. Not much else going on around here, though since Yuffie pointed out this big-ass key in our hands, we can open up the vault sitting over here, and net ourselves postcard number 4. Then, for some reason, we can just keep checking the vault. There's something unintentionally hilarious about that. Sid's not feeling too chatty right now, but if we head on into the nephew's shop, there's an interesting little detail. Every time we exit and re-enter this shop, these 3 shuffle roles. When we arrived in town, the counter was being manned by Dewey. After watching this poor sap get heartlessified, it was covered by Huey, and now after meeting the Final Fantasy trio, Louie's at the helm, and plainly the least comfortable with it. Yuffie hints we should head to the 3rd district, and that really is the only direction left to go, though I will take a quick detour through the Gizmo shop, cause that gauntlet of 45 shadows has been altered now that soldiers have been added to the mix. Now it instead builds up to a batch of 5 soldiers at once, which can actually be a pretty threatening quintet at this early stage in the game, though the experience is a bit less special considering you can fight a similar batch of 5 soldiers right outside. There's not much of an art to crowd control in this game, but it is worth noting that if you start your combo surrounded by multiple enemies, Sora's opening attack will be a vicinity clearing horizontal slash instead of his usual more focused vertical. Now let's be off to the 3rd district. Make sure your inventory is fully stocked with potions and head on in.
Gosh, are these the Heartless guys?
Let's go get them!
Our key!
Donald and Goofy join our party, and we've got a batch of 6 soldiers to acquaint ourselves with the pleasures of having someone else to bash the baddies for us. Donald and Goofy are each fully fledged combatants. Donald's a bit of a glass cannon. He'll die quickly and often, but as long as his health and magic are full, he'll dish out major damage with his powerful spells. Goofy is more of a tank. He can take a lot of hits and block even more with his shield, so what he lacks in damage, he'll make up for with persistence. They also each come fully stocked with potions to heal you and each other, which is to say they'll basically all go to Donald, but either way, it's undeniable that despite this being more soldiers than we've ever fought at once, that was one of the easiest fights yet. But the game doesn't want you to get too comfy. You like your new party members? Good, now prove you deserve them. Guard Armor is an especially complex boss. He consists of 5 enemies in one, the armored torso, 2 gauntlets, and 2 hammer legs. They can act all at once as a unit, or the individual components can split off and act independently, which can amount to a lot to deal with. So here's how we're gonna do this. We're gonna begin by focusing on the gauntlets, because they're the fastest, they're the conglomerate armor's main means of offense, and have the least HP, at only 84 each. You'll want to watch out mainly for the gauntlet Cyclone, this attack where the hands spin rapidly around. He favors doing this attack when all of his components are acting as a whole, but when the arms are desynced, you'll have to be especially careful of it as they can pursue you rapidly. The key to this whole fight is deflection. Many attacks, this one included, can only be avoided reliably by holding your ground and striking back. This'll typically give a pretty good opening for a combo as well, but if they are desynced, you'll have to be aware of the rest of the components. The second key to this fight is making sure to never let any of the segments off screen. If you have to, keep to the edge of the arena just for the sake of keeping an eye on each piece of armor, because both the feet and the torso can crack off armor hurl at any time, launching towards you and landing with an impressive shockwave. Now this attack doesn't have much of a hitbox off the ground, so all that's necessary to dodge it is a decently timed jump. It doesn't even have to be that decently timed, as you can extend your airtime with an attack, but this attack is designed to be a pain if you stop paying attention, so keep a weather eye out. I recommend air combos whenever possible, as they'll essentially protect you preemptively from this attack. One mercy the Extremities offer is that they'll drop 15 HP each when you defeat them, and thankfully, they never respawn, so this is a rare boss fight that gets easier the more progress you make. Once you've dealt with the hands, it's on to the feet. Now Dombold and Goobert aren't much for air combat, so likely the whole time you've been dealing with the hands, they've been nipping at his ankles, and you may not even have much more HP to go. But either way, their main attack is the Stomp Charge. This may be the easiest attack to parry we've encountered yet. You can basically wail on the feet and you'll accidentally parry it 90% of the time. Really, once you've gotten the hands down, nailing these hammer legs should be pretty smooth sailing. Once the torso's all alone, he'll change tactics and do one attack and one attack only. His rendition of Disneyland's teacup ride, the Whirling Placard. Now this attack looks quite threatening, but the best defense remains the same. You may want to give him some distance when he winds up this attack so you can more easily time your strike, but once he charges you surrounded by this blue aura, and worry not, he always targets Sora with this attack, give him a good whack and parry that silly Spinfini. That'll give you a big opening to bash his helm in until he starts winding up another one. Rinse and repeat, and you'll probably end up stunning him. him, crumpling to a heap on the ground, enabling you and the dynamic duo to go to town on his cuirass. And that'll wrap him up, but not before I point out how much of an abject downgrade this final mix recolor is. He was rocking that purple in the original. What is this la-di-da primary colors falderall? This Mickey Mouse Clubhouse-ass color scheme is so bright and cheery. He looks like a Gundam from the set of the Wiggles. Maybe that was the point, but I miss my royal purple, dang it! Now, if you and I are of like minds, one question you might have about this boss is, what happens if you destroy the torso before the hands and feet? Well, as it turns out, the amount of HP the torso can lose is directly tied to how much HP remains on its limbs. The more damaged they are, the further you can lower the torso's health bar, which in turn makes it impossible to reduce its HP past a certain point so long as even one of its hands or feet is still alive. A strange property for sure, one I wouldn't have even guessed at before experimenting a bit. With him down, it's time for things to slow down and talk again.
So, you were looking for me?
They too have been seeking the...
Oh hey Leon, thanks for all your help against that gigantic Heartless. Your assistance in that fight being the only reason I can think of as to why you're here at this exact moment. In all honesty, this cutscene's got a kind of weird energy to it. Every cut feels like we're skipping past a whole conversation. Like, I'm not gonna edit anything out here. This is how the scene was put together.
They too have been seeking the wielder of the Keyblade.
Hey, why don't you come with us? We can go to other worlds on our vessel.
See what I mean? It's hard to explain, but there's this disjointed feel to things.
Of course.
Are you sure?
Who knows? But we need them to come with us to help us find the king.
Sora, go with them. Especially if you want to find your friends.
Yeah, I guess.
Then Sora's got this ennui that really comes out of left field. I guess this is the first moment we've really had where things have finally slowed down and nothing's trying to kill us, but I think a beat like this would have made more sense back in the hotel. But they put it here so we could have a really Disney moment.
You can't come along looking like that. Understand?
Oh?
No frowning, no sad face, okay?
Yeah, you gotta look funny, like us. Yup. Whoa.
This boat runs on happy faces.
Happy?
That's one funny face.
Look, like, you don't really need to characterize Donald and Goofy, right? But in the context of this game, if you somehow have no idea who they are, this is the first scene where I feel like you get a real sense of what they're all about. Their laughter doesn't come off as mocking, it's genuinely good-natured, and this moment lays a really strong foundation for the relationship between this trio of main characters going forward.
Okay, why not? I'll go with you guys.
Donald Duck.
Name's Goofy.
I'm Sora.
All for one.
And one for all.
That little squirt took down that Heartless. Who'd have thought it?
Such is the power of the Keyblade. The child's strength is not his own.
Why don't we turn him into a Heartless? That'll settle things quick enough.
Every voice in this room is a joy to hear. Such enormous personalities. It's not really important whether or not you recognize these silhouettes at this point in the game. Either way, it's a great way of foreshadowing the cabal of threats that we'll have to deal with going forward.
And the brat's friends are the king's lackeys. Swung on the ice, they're all built traps by the look of them.
You're no prize yourself.
Shut up!
Enough! The Keyblade has chosen him. Will it be he who conquers the darkness? Or will the darkness swallow him?
And we get the money shot of the chief villainess, Maleficent. Maleficent was designed from a conceptual level to be the epitome of an iconic villain, so choosing her to fill that role in an epic Disney crossover game is just an inspired choice. There's not much else that needs saying about this shadowy council of evildoers watching our every move, but it's one of my favorite scenes in the game. It's such a simple yet tantalizing glimpse at the adventures ahead, and watching these characters interact, for however briefly, is such a treat. Back in Traverse Town, it's time for a traditional RPG send-off. Everyone's gathered around to wish us luck and give us some presents while they're at it. We get 500 extra money, Man, I should have mentioned earlier, yes, the currency in this game is called money. Even better, in the original Japanese version, it was called monies. They really were stingier with monies back in the original, only giving us 100 monies instead of 5. This little moment is also great. Aerith gives us an elixir and says it's from Leon, and he closes his eyes and looks away. You'll only get this elixir if you manage to best Leon in our duel earlier, so this is an adorable, begrudging congratulations from him. Not done yet, Donald gives us the power of fire. Shoot, that's something you can just give people? And Goofy gives us the dodge roll ability, both integral aspects of Sora's toolkit that I've felt naked without during these opening chapters. We'll also get a quick tutorial on Trinity marks, these little symbols we can now interact with, though for now we can only use the blue ones. But they'll give us access to various treasure when we activate them, like this batch of money over here, this balcony above the cafe here with postcard number 5. Here's a weird fun fact, in the original Japanese version, this wasn't a treasure chest, but a barrel instead. The first district is populated once again, and everyone's got at least one new bit of dialogue too. I love this one. This guy talks specifically about us beating guard armor. That's always a cool feeling, NPCs reacting to the events in their world. This lady over here says seeing the shadows reminded her of when her world was destroyed. Somber though it is, this is an equally cool line. It feels like the ramifications of their attack on this world are still real, even though the day is saved. Another cool dialogue addition is in the nephew shop. Dewey actually reacts to Donald being in our party. Their shop now also carries weapons for both of our new party members. I'll be showing off every weapon in this game, so I'll buy all 4, but we'll go over them more when we've actually got more fights to use them in. Sid's also got dialogue about things disappearing from his shop recently, which is actually slightly significant, so keep it in mind for later. While we're in here, we have a bit of an opportunity to practice our magic and light the fireplace. Even better, that will cause the chimney on the roof outside to smoke, which is a surprising bit of polish I wouldn't have expected. Now we're all stocked up and kitted out, we just beat a mighty foe and restored peace to this cozy little town. You'd think that'd be all, but there's a whole bunch more to find in this town now that we've unlocked a thing or two. So let's do another sweep. Back in the second district, we can find Leon where he was standing back when we soft-locked the game. His concern about the puppies is honestly pretty cute, and may even be an homage to his girlfriend's dog in Final Fantasy VIII. If we head through the back door of the Gizmo shop, we'll find the ladder there has been repaired, granting us access to the rooftops for a wonderful view of the second district. A mithril shard tucked away on this roof, and if we head through this window and presumably through someone's house, we'll pop out on this third district balcony where Donald and Goofy exploded somehow.
Check out this corner while we're up here and we'll find postcard number 6.
The third district now has a few points of interest. We can unlock this door that connects back to District 1, we can find a Trinity mark over behind the dog fountain, and then there's this mysterious door over here. It's covered in symbols that once again might be letters or runes of some kind. Some look pretty Greek, others maybe a bit Norse, but this line is just this line mirrored, and with nothing to go on, once again, I can only assume these are little more than scribbles designed to emulate the look of a runic language. Though interestingly, this door is marked on this map of the town over here. Of course, big fire symbol, we have fire. The puzzles in this game haven't exactly got us scratching our heads yet, so we find ourselves in this grotto with this mystery house in the middle of the lake, and a bit of a platforming challenge to get over to it, where we'll be introduced to one of the most egregious aspects of this game's platforming elements. Sora cannot jump out of water outside designated spots, forcing us to swim all the way back to shore should we miss one of these shifty stones.
There's something about this musty place. It reminds me of the secret place back home, where we used to scribble on the walls. Remember?
Kyrie?
Sora?
That's a scene that definitely deserved to play in full, even if you've seen all this game's story before, especially if you have even. Now enter Merlin, of all people, the quirky wizard mentor from Sword in the Stone.
I happen to be a wizard, a soothsayer, a prognosticator.
Apparently this is his house, and the king instructed him to give us a helping hand. This little unpacking sequence, though a bit embarrassing in comparison, is a direct reference to a similar sequence from his movie.
This is the best part now. Hicketus, ficketus, micketus, boom, prestidigitonium! Hicketus, ficketus, micketus, boom, prestidigitonium!
He also introduces us to the fairy godmother, another magical mentor figure entreated by the king to help us out. This one, of course, from Cinderella's world. I love that all these powerful magical figures are connected through King Mickey. It really builds up his legend that such competent people heed so much respect for his authority. Now, as exciting as it sounds for the Grand Wizard Merlin to teach us magic, he doesn't actually do much. We can head up to his attic and let loose on his furniture with limitless MP, which can help you figure out the ins and outs of targeting and how the fireballs arc and whatnot. For my purposes, it's a great environment for me to show off how MP actually functions in combat, obviously depleting when we cast a spell but being restored by melee attacks. I'm a sucker for any system like this, a powerful resource that's replenished by getting our hands dirty, probably even taking a risk in close quarters. The less magic we have, the fewer attacks required to gain a bar, and an aspect of it I especially like is that we can fill our magic past its maximum through melee attacks, giving us more spells to play with than we'd have if we used an item or a safe spot. Back in the main room, we've got another blue trinity, and of course the fairy godmother. For the time being, she doesn't have anything to offer us, though there is something I find satisfying about the way she specifically name drops Cinderella. I know we saw her whole mural earlier, but this is the first time we've actually heard her mentioned.
As far as details go, there are several neat odds and ends in here Merlin has brought over directly from his film. His telescope, the chalkboard Arthur learned to write his letters on. This odd little boiler here looks to have been repurposed from the mechanical jousting dummy. We've got this little steam engine model, and I did manage to find this rocket tucked in the background of this scene. And lastly, this little birdhouse hanging from the ceiling, which is no doubt home to Merlin's owl familiar Archimedes, who doesn't technically appear in this game, but we can find his likeness all over the house's exterior.
There's another birdhouse swinging around out here, this spinning ornament over the chimney is another owl, and this weather vane at the very top of the house looks to be the same as the magic symbol in our command menu. And that is everything we can currently do in Traverse Town. Seems we didn't find all 10 postcards, the rest must be in places we still can't access, or perhaps even in other worlds.
So let's turn in the 6 we did find and get some prizes.
Nothing left to do now but hike up our puffy red shorts and leave town. But there is one final thing we unlocked upon completing our party, and that is Jiminy Cricket's journal. Jiminy Cricket is sort of an honorary 4th party member, who hails from the world of Pinocchio, in which he served as the iconic conscience of the titular main character. Luckily, he's not some sort of Zelda companion who'll chirp up at every opportunity. In fact, we've heard the last from him for a while, but every step of the way he'll keep track of most aspects of our journey. The Chronicles, a bit of a story so far, a helpful feature if you take a hiatus and can't quite remember what was going on, though how Jiminy knows certain things about Sora's time on Destiny Islands I can't be certain. The Trinity list is pretty straightforward. Evidently we've found 4 of 17 total blue trinities in the game, but the character list is the juicy stuff. I could flip through these pages for hours as a kid. They give some pretty basic information on their role within the game, as well as listing their origins, whether that be a cartoon, movie, or game. While some of the entries are pretty obvious, some have got a pinch of lore to snack on. Leon's is a great example. We get an explanation for why he doesn't go by Squall. He parted with his old name to distance himself from the man who couldn't protect his home. I like how we even get an entry for the brooms, even though they only showed up for like 2.5 seconds. But the real sauce of this journal is the model viewer, letting us take any character in the game for a spin, except for Mickey. This is a real treat in the Heartless section, giving us a good look at their designs and bizarre movements outside the heat of battle. I think a good bestiary is a fantastic addition to any game, and represents an awful lot of extra work that I just really appreciate. It's also a nice touch that it tracks how many you've defeated. But I want to finish this off with probably the most famous oddity in the journal. If you view Minnie's model, you'll find that hers is the only one you can't rotate, and there's been a lot of speculation as to why that is. The most common theory I've heard is that her ears are 2D textures instead of models, and if she weren't in full front-facing view, you'd be able to see that little shortcut. This is, however, not the case. If you rip her model from the game, you can see there's nothing amiss about her ears or anything else. No, the truth is much stranger. Take a look at Mickey or Minnie in just about anything, from Steamboat Willie to Illusion Island, and you'll notice that no matter how their heads or bodies are turned, their ears are always forming that iconic silhouette towards the camera. For a while there was a rumor that this was a full-fledged contractual obligation for anyone who handled Mickey's likeness, but in all likelihood it's just a stylistic choice. Either way, the same holds true here, which you can see in the library cutscene. It's a bit blink and you'll miss it, but if you don't miss it, it does look pretty awkward. But what this boils down to is that if the game let us rotate Minnie in this journal, we'd be able to see her ears rotating around her head in all their awkward glory. And on that note, we are finished with Traverse Town. It's still definitely a bit of tutorial territory, but the hands are off the wheel now. The town, though functionally quite small, feels like a huge step up from the island in scale. The sense we've been dropped in some sort of abstract lost and found bin where things like time have stopped mattering is crushing in the face of the hope and anticipation we felt when planning the adventure to begin with. The fight against Leon is a powerful beat too. Similar to the first fight or first race with Riku, you're gonna lose unless you know this game front to back, nailing in that sense that you're out of your depth before dropping a whole other load on your lap. All we want to do is look for our friends, but now we're embroiled in this plot against the forces of evil because a big magical key chose me, and we barely have time to digest that before it's back into the fray. It's just bam, bam, bam. Guard Armor's a great fight to end with too. You and your new homies banding together to face down a foe that is also a unit made up of smaller pieces. Triumphing against all of that just pumps you up to take on the rest of this game. I can't wait. Our journey is off in full, and this time, we're in control. We've got allies, some money, it's spelled with a U, but it still spends, things are looking up. All that's left now is to decide which way we're headed. Thank you ever so much for joining me as we traversed this town. Breaking it down, flipping a frown, I'm done with that. Next time we're going to be taking our first foray into the world of a Disney movie, and if you want to see that episode right now, check out the link in the description. It's already up on my Patreon as a thank you to the incredible patrons who make this series possible, including Itziel though, who literally takes the breath away from most of the people who look at them, but don't worry, they give it back, they're chill. And Raven, who has devised a method for folding laundry that takes only 1/10 of the time, but unfortunately he won't share it with me. Additional shoutouts to Janku, Drooling, Chris Braydell, and Jojo Dwagon, and the rest of my patrons who never cease to be amazing. Thank you all again, and I will see you in the next one.